This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 1154 of Horse Tip Daily. A different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you, one day at a time. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today's tip features dressage radio show co-hosts Reese Kofler-Stanfield and Philip Parks, answering a listener question about bit, fit, and connection. Plus, I'll toss in my 2 cents at the end. And we'll get right to our tip after this from Ecovet Fly Repellent. Wouldn't it be wonderful if your horse could enjoy a zone of repellency from pesky flies? Well, he can with Ecovet. Ecovet is an entirely new type of fly repellent that is safe for horses and those applying it, offering a real alternative to toxic pesticides like pyrethrins. Ecovet confuses an insect's normal directional ability, the bug's GPS, if you will. So if it can't locate your horse, it can't bite your horse. Dr. Wendy Ying from the Driving Radio Show has been using it in South Florida, also known as the Jurassic Park of biting insects, and she just loves it. Ecovet's active ingredients are naturally occurring food-grade fatty acids that have been clinically shown to improve the condition of horses with difficult-to-treat sweet itch problems. Ecovet is effective on mosquitoes, ticks, no-see-ums, as well as flies. You can visit Ecovet online at eco-vet.com for more information or to order. You can find Ecovet at Dover Saddlery Stores and Ecovet's on Facebook. Just search Ecovet, E-C-O-V-E-T.
Take it away, Philip.
Okay, well, we got this email. It's a little bit of a long email, so I won't read the entire thing, but hopefully I can get to the pertinent points here. As a dressage rider, I really love the teaching of horsemen like Ray Hunt, Tom Dorrance, and Buck Brenneman. I find their peaceful training techniques completely aligned with the partnership in dressage. I often apply both concepts in my training, which works out really well. However, there is one point of debate for which I would like to seek your thoughts. It is in regard to bit placement in the horse's mouth. In my dressage training, I have often been instructed the bit adjustment on the headstall cheek pieces should create 1 to 2 wrinkles in the corners of the horse's mouth. I have never been given a reason, just merely instruction. However, in reading Ray, Tom, and Buck's books, I have encountered the idea to drop the bit to relieve the pressure on the corners of the horse's mouth so that it sits gently in the corners, not creating any wrinkles, but also not so low as to hit the teeth. The logic for this is that the 1 to 2 wrinkle theory would create a constant pressure for the horse that he would eventually have to ignore and tune out. Ultimately, the rider would have to create even more pressure on the reins and would defeat any sensitization and connection development. There's lots more, but I think people get the idea where we're at here with 1 to 2 wrinkles does create a little pressure on the horse's mouth. And also when we're riding dressage, you should create a connection in which there will be some pressure on the bars of the mouth continuously. That's the idea of connection. But to answer this question most simply is that I adjust the bit in the horse's mouth so he can't get the tongue over it, more or less, right? If the bit's too low, the horse can at times just pop the tongue over, and that can be very painful for the horse. So I mean, most simply, I'm adjusting the bit so that can't happen, right? Sure. And that's about it for me. What like Reese, talk to us a little bit about connection and how we like the horse to take a little pressure in the mouth, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, connection is a big thing. It's actually part of the scale of training. So, typically as you are teaching a horse in dressage, and interestingly enough, I just purchased a horse this week. I bought a new horse, and he's a cute little guy, but he's been a jumper. So he doesn't really understand the idea that he has to keep his hind legs moving, and eventually the energy ends up in my hand. He wants to back off the bit. Which is typical for a jumper. He probably had a pretty strong bit in his mouth, so he wants to not really grab a hold. And I tell my students, it's like, basically, let's hold hands. I don't want to hold hands that you're ripping my arm off, and I don't want to hold hands that like if you feel like you're shaking your grandma's hand where you don't actually grab any connection. So there is a happy place that you always want to have with the horse and the rider. And the happy place starts actually in the hind legs. Anytime you feel something up front, typically there's an issue behind. And that's really what we're talking about here is that when you engage the horse and when you ask them to go forward, you need to feel them actually take a little bit of hold of the bit. Some horses obviously take way too much of a hold of the bit, which is uncomfortable for everybody. And that's not what we want. But some horses don't take enough of that hold. So it's as the rider of a dressage horse, you have to create that connection between the horse's hind leg, your seat, leg, and hand, and the bit. And we talk a lot about pushing the horse up to the bit. And that's the idea, is that the horse needs to accept the pressure. Obviously, you want to have a nice, soft connection starting. Connection really starts at your shoulder and then goes to your elbow, wrist to the bit. You want to have a connection that's comfortable for yourself and for the horse. So that's a little bit about it. So the bit placement is important, that it's not too high. Obviously, if it's too high, I don't know if you've ever put a piece of metal into your mouth and pushed it up against your lips. It can be painful. So obviously, we don't want that. And like Philip said, we don't want the bit too low in the horse's mouth because then they can get the tongue over the top of it. And if you've ever had that happen, that's never fun. It happens mostly in double bridles, can happen in a single snaffle. But sometimes you can change, for example, especially in a double with a curb bit, you can adjust the curb bit a little higher, a little lower, depending on the horse. I've had some that prefer it lower in their mouth versus higher. But it really is an issue. And then, we can go all into types of bits and pressure. It's huge science. And a lot of times, and I don't know about you, Philip, but I have a huge bit box because I like people to be able to try sort of what's out there and what are some options for their horse.
Yeah, I mean, every horse has a a different bit that they kind of prefer, and we try and find something that makes the horse happy and comfortable, and not backed off of the bit, right? You're not loosening your hands and not curling up with his nose towards his chest. So yeah, you want that horse. You want to feel as you're trotting around that, or cantering, or less in the walk. You don't really get a great strong connection in the walk, but you want to feel them pull you around the ring a little bit. I think dressage is a little bit different. We're talking about the sensitization. I have a hard time with that word. Don't worry about it. Certain words I can't say, but with sensitivity of the horse's mouth, like dressage is different than some of the other disciplines where the bit is used to stop. Our goal is never to pull back on the hands to stop the horse. So the horse doesn't have to be sensitive to the bit to stop or to turn or anything. All that comes from seat and leg pushing this way and that way, and to stop, from pressure in the saddle and not from the hands. So I don't need a super sensitive horse that's going to stop or turn quickly when I do something with a bit. I just want a nice steady pressure, keep riding that horse to that pressure. That's what creates the round neck and the round back, pushing towards that pressure and taking that and accepting it. And then, I can do tons of other things to turn or to put the brakes on if you need to. So you don't want the horse so sensitive that as soon as you just have a little tiny pressure on the mouth that they stop or start going backwards. Never train a horse like that. That's completely incorrect. So hopefully that kind of idea helps with this listener question that yes, the horse isn't as sensitive to the mouth in dressage as I've seen them in some of the Western riding and the reining classes, right? I mean, when they touch it, the horse really reacts and that's a little bit different thing, but we're riding for connection and the horse to be comfortable with taking a little bit of a hold. That sound about right there, Reese?
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's constantly something you're working on. Eventually when you have a Grand Prix horse or an upper level horse that understands that feeling, you can sort of pick up the reins and say, okay, this is what I want. But as you're developing horses through the levels, that's what you're working on, is that connection.
Yeah,
so.
Sometimes you want a little bit more, sometimes you want a little bit less. That's something you're always looking at and saying, okay, how much pressure do you have on your hand now? How much now?
Right.
And this movement needs, a little more go and a little bit more pressure. I mean, obviously, in the extended gaits, that the horses can take quite a strong hold in that. I mean, it's not always ideal, but that's just something that happens and you develop in your training. And it's not necessarily something to worry about when the horse, when you ask for extended trot and the horse takes a hold of the bit a little bit and you get pulled along, that can happen. So you're constantly developing it, changing the balance, working on contact is such a huge thing. We could talk about it for weeks. So. Yeah. It's great that we get questions about it and about, bit placement, saddle stuff. This is great stuff, great feedback from our listeners
for us
to have topics to talk about and things to bring on the show.
Exactly. And please keep our listener emails and Facebook shout outs. We really try to answer them online or on air. And if we can't answer them, Philip and I ourselves, we will find somebody that can. So thanks for writing in.
Well, there you go. And my 2 cents. For the most part, you see curb bits or a bit with a lever action is going to be fitted with no wrinkle. And snaffle bits will be fitted with a variation of 1 or 2 wrinkles. Even with a double bridle, the snaffle creates the wrinkle, not the curb. In the Western tradition, the bridle is used very different than in the English tradition, seeing as how the cowboy had his hands busy on a lasso or the like. So things evolved very differently from that in the dressage tradition, where an elastic connection in the reins is an essential part of the aids. Regardless of the tradition, snaffle or curb, 2 wrinkles or none, the horse needs to feel comfortable and confident with the bit fit. Cuts or abrasions on the mouth always mean there is something wrong with the fit, the placement, or the skill of the hands at the other end of the reins, and most of the time it's a combination therein. So I hope that helped out. This is Coach Jen, and I'll have another tip soon. So until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.